She was fragile, but her spirit was louder than all of us. My grandma used to say, when I'm gone, the ones who stayed will carry the light, and the ones who vanished will chase shadows. I didn't know how true that would become. While the rest of my family was off enjoying vacations, posting selfies, or fighting over which car to buy next, I was there holding her hand at 2 a.m. when the pain came back, rubbing her feet when she couldn't feel her toes anymore. I gave up everything, but they were the ones who got rewarded. My name is Samantha Greer. I'm 26 years old, and this is the story of how my family betrayed me after everything I did for the one person who meant the world to me. If you've ever felt unappreciated, unseen, or used by your own blood, hit subscribe, leave a comment, and let them know you're done staying silent. Grandma Elaine wasn't just my grandmother. She was the glue that held this messy, prideful, power-hungry family together. After Grandpa passed, it was like the house lost its heartbeat, and she became both the light and the anchor. But nobody seemed to notice her slipping. Nobody except me. I still remember the first time I caught her standing in the middle of the kitchen, confused. The kettle was on, the water was boiling, but she looked lost, like she didn't know what it was for. When I asked, she smiled and said, "Oh, sweetie, I was just thinking." But that was the moment I knew something wasn't right. My parents lived 20 minutes away, my uncle 10. My cousins were scattered across the state but drove in for birthdays and only for pictures. But the late nights, the hospital calls. The slow unraveling of her memory, the bills piling up, the loneliness of a house filled with echoing memories. That was mine to carry. I moved in when I was 23, left my job, paused my art career, and traded gallery dreams for grocery runs, doctor visits, and sitting beside her while she told me stories she didn't realize she'd already told twice that day. But I never complained. She was my safe place as a kid. This was the least I could do. They called sometimes, mostly to say check if she paid the water bill, or tell her I can't make it this Thanksgiving. But visits, no. Help, never. In fact, when I told my aunt that Grandma might need a full-time nurse or even a better bed, she said, "Well, that's what you're there for, isn't it?" I didn't know they were already planning. Plotting, really. While I wiped spills and helped her into the shower, they were whispering about the house, the jewelry, the land. Grandma didn't talk about money much except to say she had a will and that she made sure the right people were taken care of. I thought that meant me. She told me once, in the quietest voice, "You're the only one who sees me, Sammy. Everyone else looks past me, but you look into me." I cried that night because I thought, foolishly, that love mattered in families. The last week was the worst. Her lungs got weaker, her appetite vanished, and her eyes stopped tracking the morning light through the window like they used to. I stayed up all night holding her hand as the machines beeped their cruel song. When she passed, I didn't feel the earth shake. I felt something inside me die, a part I didn't even know was alive. Then they came, like vultures, my mother, my aunt, the cousins who hadn't visited in over a year. They hugged me, yes, wore black, posted photos with cheesy captions like "Heaven gained another angel." But I saw it in their eyes. They were waiting for the reading of the will. I hadn't thought about that. I truly hadn't. I was still folding her nightgowns and placing them in a bag, still washing the teacup she sipped from on her final day. But they were in a frenzy, whispering, smiling, making plans. I still remember sitting in that lawyer's office. The dusty smell, the old carpet, the legal assistant handing out coffee none of us drank. I sat in the corner, quiet, humble, tired. The lawyer opened the envelope, cleared his throat, and then he started reading. Her home, to my uncle, her jewelry collection, to my aunt, savings accounts, investments, antiques all divvied up between people who hadn't even known what medication she was on. And my name, it wasn't spoken. Not once I thought maybe it was a mistake, maybe a second envelope, maybe a final letter just for me, but no, that was it. When I stood up, stunned, no one even looked surprised. My mother offered a fake little smile, one of those tight-lipped ones she used when she didn't want to be caught gloating. My aunt even said, "Maybe she thought you'd be okay on your own." I walked out. But something didn't sit right, not just the heartbreak, the wrongness of it all. The woman who used to call me her angel, who once told me everything I have is yours, would not leave me nothing. Unless someone made sure she did. That's when the questions started forming in my mind. How long ago had that will been updated? Why had the lawyer looked uneasy while reading it? And why did my uncle avoid my eyes when I asked what really happened in the months before she got worse? I didn't cry that night. I packed my bags. I grabbed the photo album she always kept hidden under her bed, and I opened her old closet where she used to keep boxes I'd never gone through. And there, buried beneath dusty letters and moth-bitten scarves, I found something that would make everything fall apart. I didn't sleep the night after the will was read. How could I? Every creak in the old house sounded like betrayal echoing back at me. I kept hearing the lawyer's voice, so monotone, so detached, as if he was reading the grocery list of someone else's life, not the woman I had poured every ounce of my love, energy, and youth into. As he rattled off the names of my aunt, my uncle, my cousin's people who hadn't even been around when Grandma couldn't stand up without help, I waited for mine. Just once, just a line, a sentence, but nothing came. Not even a passing mention, no thank you, no keepsake, no memory, no name. It was like I had been erased. I sat there in that musty little law office as the final page turned, and I remember glancing around the room. Nobody looked surprised. Nobody seemed confused. They all knew. They were expecting it. That silence wasn't shock, it was victory. They'd gotten away with it. I stood up slowly, keeping my expression blank. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. My mom gave me a fake, tight-lipped smile like she was offering pity, but I saw the flicker in her eyes, not sadness, relief that I had been cut out. I left the office and didn't say a word. I got in my car and drove straight back to Grandma's house, or rather, the house that now legally belonged to my uncle. I still had keys, for now. I walked inside, dropped my bag on the couch, and stood in the middle of the living room. And I felt hollow. 3 years I gave them. 3 years of bed baths and meal prepping and late night emergency calls. 3 years of watching the strongest woman I ever knew wither away while the rest of them played dumb and stayed distant. I gave her love, dignity, comfort, and they gave her absence. But somehow they were the ones rewarded. No, something wasn't right. I wasn't naive. I didn't expect millions or some mansion, but I knew my grandmother. She was sentimental. She remembered birthdays with hand-written letters. She gave me a heart-shaped locket when I got accepted into art school. She once told me, when I'm gone, I want you to have what truly matters, not the valuables, but the meaningful. So how could she just forget me unless someone made her forget? That night, I started looking through her things, not out of greed, but out of desperation. I needed answers, not money, and the first place I went was the closet in her old bedroom. She used to keep all her memories there, boxes stacked high, letters tied with ribbons, photo albums that smelled like lavender and thyme. As a child, I'd once asked her why she never threw anything away. She said, because the moment you do, someone tries to rewrite the past. I didn't understand it then. Now I did. I started going through everything, one box at a time, old letters, receipts, journals. Medical bills, photographs of her wedding, of my mother as a teenager, of me as a baby. Then I found a small locked box at the very bottom. It was brass, heavy, and it had her initials on the lid, E.M. Elaine Morrison. I didn't know the combination, but I remembered something else. The little paper she kept inside her Bible. I ran to the drawer by her bed, pulled the old Bible open, and sure enough, tucked between Psalms and Proverbs, was a faded index card with a number written in her shaky handwriting. The code was her wedding date. I unlocked the brass box. Inside were papers, legal ones, some handwritten, some typed. I saw a copy of a will, but it was different from the one the lawyer read. This one had my name on it, dated just 2 years ago. It left me the house, her jewelry, and a handwritten note that said, to the only one who stayed. I froze. This was real. This was her will. So what did they do? I kept digging and found an envelope addressed to the same lawyer unopened. Stamped, never mailed. They never filed it. They hid it. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might faint, but the fury that followed was like fire in my veins. They stole everything, not just money or things. They stole her wishes. They erased me from her legacy and handed it to themselves like snakes coiled around a dying tree. And worst of all, they thought I'd just accept it. I took photos of everything. Every page, every signature, every timestamp. I emailed them to myself, to a backup account, to a flash drive. Then I packed that box up, locked it again, and placed it right back where I found it, because I knew what I had to do next. This wasn't going to end in silence, not like they wanted. I wasn't going to sue, not yet. I wasn't going to scream or beg. No, first, I was going to let them celebrate, let them divide up the spoils. Let them move in, redecorate, take pictures for Instagram in the house I cleaned and maintained while Grandma withered, and then I was going to expose every last one of them, not just what they did, but how they did it. With dates, with forged papers, with her own words, because my grandma trusted me, and I was about to make sure everyone knew what kind of family betrayed her and buried her truth with her. When I walked out of that house the next morning, I wasn't the same woman who had walked in the day before. Something had shifted not just in my heart, but in my spine. I was no longer grieving. I was focused. Alert, ready. They thought they had buried everything, but they didn't count on me finding the truth tucked away in a locked brass box that carried my grandmother's initials and my last shred of hope. They had erased me from her will, the one they had read out loud in that soulless lawyer's office. But what they didn't know was that she had written another one with my name written boldly in black ink across nearly every line. One that spoke to love, not greed. One that told the story they were desperate to hide, her real will. But as powerful as it was, there was a problem. It wasn't signed. I sat at my tiny kitchen table, that morning light pouring in through dusty blinds, reading the document over and over like it might change on the 5th or 6th time, but it never did. There it was in plain detail, my name, her wishes, her thoughts. She had even written a note to the lawyer, "Please call me Tuesday, I'll come in and sign." The date on that note, 1 week before she fell, and I remembered that week too well. She had a small fall, they said. Slipped near the back steps, bruised her ribs. After that, things went downhill fast. She was in and out of lucidity, in and out of the hospital. She was suddenly unavailable. Every time I asked if I could visit, my mother told me, "She's sleeping," or "She's not herself today." But now, reading this document, a horrifying thought began to surface. What if that fall wasn't just a fall? What if they made sure she couldn't sign it? I pushed the thought down. I wasn't ready to go there yet. Not until I had more. Instead, I focused on what I could do prove that this unsigned will was real, valid, authentic, that it wasn't just a hopeful draft, but a document she fully intended to make legal. I needed to trace every detail from the moment she wrote it to the moment it got buried. I started with the envelope, the one addressed to the lawyer but never mailed. It had a return address in her handwriting. Inside was the original will, a printed draft with margin notes and scribbles. She'd even underlined one sentence: "The house shall belong to my granddaughter," the only one who remained when everyone else walked away. I got chills reading it. Then I remembered something. Grandma used to keep an old flip phone. She said she didn't trust these new gadgets. If she had called the lawyer or anyone, maybe there'd be a record. I dug through her desk drawers, the kitchen junk bin, even behind her nightstand. And finally, in the bottom of her knitting basket, I found the old phone. The battery was dead, but the charger was still tucked beside it. I plugged it in and waited. 5 minutes later, the screen flickered to life. I went straight to her call logs, the last call she ever made, to the lawyer's office, 9 days before her death, and right below that, a missed call from him 2 days later. They'd spoken. He had returned her call. And if he remembered, maybe I had proof that she was actively trying to sign the new will, that it wasn't just wishful thinking, but part of a legal process they had intercepted and shut down. I immediately called his office. It rang. "Good afternoon, Hollister and Rowe Law Offices. How may I help you?" "Hi," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "My name is Grace Whitman. I'm calling about my grandmother, Elaine Morrison. I believe she contacted your office before her death to update her will. I've found a document and a draft letter addressed to you." There was a pause. "One moment, please." The hold music crackled. When the lawyer came on, his voice was hesitant at first. I could tell he wasn't sure how much he could legally say. "I do remember speaking to Mrs. Morrison," he said. "She requested a formal update to her will. We discussed it briefly, and I told her to mail the draft and call once she was ready to finalize. She never followed up. She was never allowed to," I said bitterly. "I found the letter. They never mailed it." Another pause. "Miss Whitman, if you can provide what you've found, timestamps, drafts, call logs, we may have a case for a lost will. It's not simple, but it can be contested, especially if the intent is clearly documented." And right there, that word, intent, it became my anchor. I had her intent. I had the will, the phone log, the unopened letter, the note in the Bible, the margin scribbles in her handwriting, and I had something else. Rage, not the kind that burns and fades, the kind that focuses, the kind that waits. I wasn't going to storm into anyone's house. I wasn't going to scream at the next family barbecue. No, I was going to build a case. I was going to get expert handwriting analysis. I was going to get legal advice on a constructive trust claim. I was going to gather everything and let the facts, not fury, bury them. Because while they spent weeks toasting their inheritance, I was digging up the grave they built with lies. And soon, everyone would know what they did to the woman who trusted them. If guilt had a sound, it would be the silence that filled our family group chat after I sent a photo of Grandma's real will. No one responded, not Mom, not Uncle Henry, not Jenna, who had practically done a cart, will the day the house was signed over to her. Silence, not even a "where did you find that?" or a fake concern like, "we had no idea," just cold, cowardly quiet. And in that stillness, I realized something. They weren't confused. They weren't shocked. They knew, and that told me everything. They thought they'd won. But what they didn't count on, what they could never imagine, was just how much my grandmother foresaw what they were capable of. She might have been in her 80s, but she wasn't naive. She'd lived through loss, betrayal, wars, and single motherhood. She'd survived heartbreaks they couldn't even spell. She knew her children. She knew what they were after, and she left clues. It started with her old phone, the one I'd charged to find the lawyer's number. I had already gone through her messages and recent calls, but there was one folder I hadn't checked yet, voice memos. It wasn't labeled, just a tiny icon buried in the apps she barely touched. My heart raced as I tapped it open. A list popped up. March 3 update will notes. March 5, Henry came by again. March 9, just in case they lie. My blood ran cold. There were more than a dozen recordings. My thumb hovered over the first one. Click. The soft crackle of her voice filled the room. "Grace, I don't know if you'll ever hear this, but I'm making notes for you, for anyone who might care enough to know the truth. I've decided to change my will. Again, the house is going to you. Not because you're my favorite, though you might be, but because you're the only one who shows up without asking for something." I burst into tears right there, her voice clear as daylight, sharp, witty, full of love. Not a single sign of confusion or forgetfulness. She was articulate, organized, entirely present, so much for she was slipping. Mom, I listened to the next recording. March 5, Henry dropped by again, said he was just checking in, but I saw him snooping through the drawer in the study. "I know what he's looking for, the draft of the new will. I moved it. It's safe. If anything happens to me before I sign it, Grace, it's in the sewing tin under the second shelf." Remember that the sewing tin. I froze. What sewing tin? She had dozens of them. I jumped up, wiped my eyes, and made a beeline to the closet in the guest room, the one that smelled like lavender and powder, the one that held her old quilting scraps. I pulled down box after box until I spotted it, a dented floral, patterned tin tucked behind a basket of buttons. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside, a USB stick, a spiral notebook, and a sealed envelope labeled, "If I die too soon." I sat on the floor. The world around me narrowed to one single sound, my heart pounding like war drums in my ears. I plugged the USB into my laptop. More voice recordings, this time longer, more personal, evidence, hours of her dictating thoughts, legal phrasing, telling the story of why she was changing everything, and all of it time-stamped, cataloged, and dated before her health rapidly declined. No lawyer could ignore this. No judge could call her delusional. She had documented everything, and as I listened to her final recording, I understood something else. She hadn't just been preparing for her death, she had been preparing for their betrayal. Grace, if you're hearing this, I'm gone, and if they left you out, baby, fight. Don't let them say I forgot you. Don't let them say I was confused. I was clear, I was sure, I love you, and I always knew you'd be the one to uncover the rest. Her voice broke at the end of that line. And mine shattered. They said she was forgetful. That's how they justified overriding her choices, silencing her wishes, and locking me out of the house I used to help her clean every Sunday afternoon. They said she was slipping when she started pulling away from them, but maybe she wasn't slipping at all. Maybe she was just seeing clearly, and now I had proof, not just in writing, but in her own voice. In that moment, my grief gave way to strategy. I got legal advice from a different firm, one without ties to my family. I laid out the will, the phone records, the envelope, and now the audio files. The attorney's eyebrows rose. "This," she said, pointing to the flash drive, "is gold. If we can authenticate these memos and prove she was in a sound state of mind, you have a very strong basis to file a will contest, maybe even elder coercion or interference charges." Interference. That word stuck to my bones, because now, with every clue stacking up, I had to ask, had they interfered on purpose? Had someone made sure Grandma wouldn't make it to that signing appointment? Or was it just convenient timing? Either way, they were going to answer for it. I stood in front of Grandma's photo that night. I lit a candle. I whispered a promise. I'm not done. There's a specific kind of silence that only falls when people know they are about to be exposed. It's not peaceful. It's not calm. It's a loud, crawling tension, the kind that makes hands tremble against glassware and eyes flick to the nearest exit. That was the exact silence inside my mother's perfectly decorated dining room when I pulled out my phone, opened the voice memo folder, and said 5 words that cracked the air like thunder. Grandma has something to say. No one moved. Not Mom, standing behind her centerpiece of fall-themed candles. Not Uncle Henry, whose smug face paled faster than I'd ever seen. Not Jenna, clutching her glass of wine like it was the last thing tethering her to reality. They didn't know what was coming, but I did, because they had spent months calling her forgetful, claiming confusion, rewriting her final wishes behind my back, and now she was about to speak for herself, loud and clear, from beyond the grave. And I was done protecting their comfort. It had taken me days to get here, to gather everything, to authenticate the recordings, to meet with the lawyer and check every legal angle before unleashing the truth. But the moment I realized Grandma had left me a blueprint, a voice trail, time-stamped and intentional, something in me flipped. I wasn't the quiet girl anymore, not the polite niece, not the daughter who let things slide. I was the storm they never saw coming. And this night, this fake little family dinner was the perfect stage. They thought I was coming to make peace. Mom even tried to spin it as a healing holiday meal, as if an autumn-themed roast chicken could erase months of betrayal. But when I walked in, I didn't bring a bottle of wine. I brought truth and revenge. I waited until after the food was served, until they were mid-laugh, retelling stories that twisted my stomach. Then I stood up, slid my chair back slowly, and reached into my bag. I found something. I said, voice steady. Everyone paused. Forks froze. Chews stopped mid-bite. I found the original will, and I found her recordings. Uncle Henry scoffed. Recordings. I looked him dead in the eye. Yes, Grandma recorded herself dozens of times. She left voice memos about you, about all of this. I turned the volume all the way up and hit play. Grace, I don't know if you'll ever hear this, but I'm making notes for you, for anyone who might care enough to know the truth. Her voice filled the room, strong, clear, crystal, not confused, not babbling, not lost, just deliberate and heartbreakingly lucid. I watched their faces. Mom turned pale. Jenna's hand trembled as she set down her glass. Uncle Henry opened his mouth, then shut it again. I let the recording play for another full minute, right up to the part where Grandma said, "I've decided to give the house to Grace. She earned it. The others, they've made it clear what matters most to them." And then I paused it. That was recorded 2 weeks before she got sick. I said, "It's time-stamped. She was of sound mind, and this isn't the only one." I pulled out a small speaker and placed it on the table. "Want to hear what she said about you, Henry, or how she caught you looking for the draft in her study?" He went red. "I don't know what you're talking about, you do." I cut in, "And so does my lawyer." That got their attention. "Lawyer?" Mom whispered. "Yes, I've opened a formal challenge to the will. I have legal documentation. I have a copy of the draft she referenced. I have audio files proving intent, and I have motive all of you. You're ruining the family." Jenna snapped, her voice rising. "No," I said calmly. "You did that when you stole from her, when you lied, when you made her final days about money instead of love." Silence again. And then the most shocking thing of all, Uncle Henry stood up and left. Didn't say a word, didn't argue, just grabbed his coat and stormed out. That told me more than anything. He knew it was real. He knew he was done. Mom tried damage control, of course. Begged me to stop airing family issues. Like it was a dirty laundry day instead of a reckoning. But it was too late for her soft, voiced guilt trips and tight, mild gaslighting. I wasn't the same daughter who let her rewrite truth with tone. I had my grandmother's voice, and I was done playing nice. When I left that night, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The fire had already been lit, and it wasn't going out. I sent copies of the voice memos to my attorney, uploaded them to a private cloud, and prepared for the next battle, the courtroom. But as I stepped into the cold evening air, one feeling overpowered all the rest, not grief, not anger, justice, because for once I wasn't being gaslit or erased. I wasn't the selfish one or the overreactor. I was the only person in that family who had honored Grandma's wishes, and now she was honoring me back, with her voice, with the truth, and very soon, with her legacy. The silence that followed the playback of Grandma's voice wasn't just uncomfortable, it was devastating. Each word she had recorded tore apart the perfect little fantasy my family had built around themselves. The people who once smugly looked down on me, the disappointment, the selfish. Granddaughter now sat frozen, their faces pale as stone, their secrets unraveling in front of everyone who mattered. That audio didn't just confirm that Grandma wanted me to have her house, it revealed why she was scared to make it official. Grandma's voice, calm but tired, said it all. "I wanted Grace to have everything, but they keep pressuring me. They told me I was old and confused, but I'm not. I know who stood by me, and it wasn't them. When I looked up, their eyes wouldn't meet mine." The lawyer was still holding the tablet, stunned. Aunt Marlene was already tearing up, not out of guilt but fear. Uncle Rob tried to recover first, leaning forward with a fake chuckle, saying, "Well, that's out of context, obviously." But no one in the room believed him. Not anymore. 2 days later, the lawyer contacted me privately. He'd reviewed all the voice recordings, cross-checked the journal entries I found, and made calls to Grandma's old caretaker, who confirmed everything. The manipulation, the coercion, the family meetings, where they pushed Grandma to rewrite the will before it was too late. Apparently, my uncle even offered to handle the paperwork, and had her sign under pressure one night after giving her sleeping meds. The will they submitted was legally shaky, and now, with my evidence, the lawyer had grounds to contest it. A new probate case was opened. This time, I was named the primary beneficiary. I didn't even feel triumphant at first, just exhausted. Justice for me wasn't about property. It was about Grandma's voice finally being heard. Word spread fast. Cousins who hadn't called in years started sending me awkward texts. "Hey, heard about the situation. Hope you're okay." Old family friends who'd once praised Marlene's caretaking started whispering about her motives. Even the local church, where Uncle Rob played the respectable deacon, quietly removed him from speaking duties. What hurt the most was realizing how easily they had erased me from Grandma's memory, as if love could be rewritten with ink and intimidation. But now the truth was out, and the damage they caused, it came back like a boomerang. They tried to fight the new case, of course, claimed the audio was fabricated, but voice authentication experts verified it. Grandma's words were clear, consistent, and damning. By the end of the court hearing, the judge didn't just reassign the house to me. He launched an investigation into will tampering. The family wasn't just embarrassed, they were exposed. Aunt Marlene's nursing license, suspended pending further inquiry. Uncle Rob's charity board position, gone, and the cherry on top. They were ordered to repay the estate for money they'd siphoned off while Grandma was sick. I stood on the porch of Grandma's old house, my house now, as the moving trucks drove away with the last of their stolen furniture. The rooms felt quiet, but not empty. I swear I could still feel her warmth in the walls. Her photo sat on the mantel, the one where she was smiling wide, wearing her Sunday hat. I whispered, "We did it, Grandma. They finally heard you. I didn't win because I was smarter or richer or louder. I won because I never stopped listening to her, to the truth, to the quiet voice inside me that said, 'This isn't right. Don't let it go,' and I didn't. Now I live here. I've restored the garden she loved." I kept her teacups. I even play her favorite records on Sunday mornings. I honor her memory the right way. The rest of the family, they faded into their own shadows, haunted by what they did and what they lost. Because you can erase a name from a will, but you can't erase what's real, and the truth, it always finds a way out.